What's up, y'all? It has been a while since I've done one of these videos. I am trying to do PowerPoint reviews of all the games that I play this year. Obviously, I haven't done one since the beginning of the year, so this is kind of a backlog of games that I've played this year. I'm going to start moving through them, hopefully posting these, once every other week or so, chronicling the games that I both play and beat in the year of 2026. These should be short, quick PowerPoint reviews, but hopefully informative if anyone else watches them. Mostly for myself, kind of chronicling my year of playing games. So first up is Code Vein. Okay, so Code Vein, this PowerPoint review, we're going to go over a few different things for Code Vein. We'll give over kind of a brief history of the game. When did it come out? Who developed it? What were the general sentiments at the time of its release? Some of these are going to be more in-depth than others. For Code Vein, it's pretty short and sweet. I'm going to discuss some story thoughts on the game. I'm going to discuss my thoughts on the gameplay, and then I'm going to overall give a review score and recommendation. So, Code Vein. This is an action RPG developed by Bandai Namco Studios. It recently got a sequel. Code Vein 2, I think, released this year. If not, it was late last year. Code Vein 1 did okay in terms of Metacritic response. Critically received fairly warmly, with a Metacritic ranging from 70 to 75. I give a range there because sometimes, Metacritic is including reviews conducted when the game came out, but also get reviews that are current, so it can be skewed a little bit. The game was released in September of 2019. It was released on all major platforms at the time: PS4, Xbox One, and PC. And yeah, that's a brief history of when it came out. So what is Code Vein in terms of story? Well, Code Vein I would most easily describe as being something like a post-apocalyptic anime. I believe it's actually set in an anime universe. I'm not quite sure which one at this point. But it certainly follows those anime beats. I've heard it referred to as like an anime Bloodborne, and I don't think that's unfair to say. That's certainly what it seems to be going for. For me, the story in the game was pretty underdeveloped overall. I felt that the main plot was hard to follow, and the game did a really poor job of integrating the story into the gameplay. What I mean by that is games that, like Dark Souls, a game that it very much tries to emulate, a game like Dark Souls will integrate gameplay and story together in a really meaningful way. You encounter characters throughout the world and events while you're playing. There's no cutscene takeaways. Certainly certain games can do cutscenes and things like that very effectively. In this game, it's extremely divided. You're either watching a cutscene or playing a very linear, gameplay portion of reliving memories. And that's the way that the game presents the majority of its story, and then its gameplay is a separate thing entirely. And so to me, it kind of felt like, oh, I'm watching this anime and I'm playing this game. It doesn't really mesh very well, and the gameplay certainly does not impact the story in a meaningful way. I did find that the plotline surrounding one of the characters, Mia, and her brother Nicola, that was fairly interesting and worth investing in. So that was kind of a highlight for me, but overall, I didn't really find it to be very memorable, and having played and beaten this game months ago now, I honestly couldn't tell you much more about the main plot at this point, which shows that it didn't really stick with me much at all. Okay, so gameplay. The game is a Souls-like. It's an action RPG. It's very much in the Souls genre. You gather what are essentially souls. You go to bonfires, essentially. Use those to upgrade your character, level up. There's armor and armaments, and there are a few twists to the gameplay beyond that, but that is the classic loop. The game does not really stray very far from it. Certainly feels very much in this subgenre of Souls-like. I have a note here. It feels like a borderline copy of the Souls games at times. I think that's fair. It really doesn't do much to add to the genre. It is similar in a sense to the early Dark Souls games, in the sense that it's kind of a labyrinthian environment that you can navigate, and then you also teleport to different zones. which is cool. Like I like that compared to like a traditional open world, unless the open world's done incredibly well. Just because it kind of keeps things focused and there's not really fetch quests or anything like that. Really, this game doesn't have many side quests at all. And so the game feels fairly focused, but it certainly feels unoriginal, I would say, in its overall design. It does have a nice anime aesthetic that I think a lot of people will find pleasing. It makes games, especially from like the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4 era. Sometimes I think games from that era struggle to feel visually compelling now, where this game I think actually does. Even though the visuals maybe aren't like technically impressive, they still look good because of this like anime aesthetic. Sometimes it could be done poorly. I think it's done pretty well in this game, and it feels pretty good. I have a note that the map is good. Yes, the map. I remember now that the navigation map in the game is actually really, really helpful. It tells you when you've cleared areas. It has clear denotions of height and different things like that, which just make it really easy to use as a tool, which I actually find very helpful and satisfying. Dark Souls almost intentionally kind of keeps that as like a point of difficulty. Like the game wants you to struggle to navigate. And for me, I don't find that super appealing. I found having the map in this game to be much more appealing. A little bit more about the visuals. I kind of already talked about this, but it has like this almost like crisp, nice aesthetic that really holds up over time. The environments vary frequently. The different zones, I would say, in this map are pretty unique, which is really important, I think, for any RPG, especially these action RPGs, to keep the game feeling fresh as you continue through multiple different environments. It feels like each zone feels substantially different, which is really helpful in keeping you engaged as the player. Character designs I thought were good too. The weapon designs were good. Everything is very varied and appealing. I think it's just a good looking game, and that helps it overcome things like rough textures, which maybe date it to like, okay, this looks like a PS4 game that actually kind of almost looks like a PS3 game up-resed. It doesn't really end up mattering all that much because they did the art, the direction is so good in the game. Is this an RPG? I think this is a good point of discussion for this game, because while you level up, there's not a ton of variety in the ways in which you level. Like you don't even necessarily, if I'm remembering correctly, don't even necessarily assign skill points. You just kind of level up. Like your character just gets stronger over the course of the game. There's a numeric number. There's a number associated with like your strength, more or less. But you're not making decisions in terms of like, I'm going to put points in strength or dexterity or things like that. The way that you kind of make your character more unique in terms of like, a strength build, a dexterity build is more in the weapons you choose and the way in which you kind of customize them, which I guess is his own sense of RPG, but it is not your traditional like leveling system. The equipment is really where you consistently can make yourself more unique. You do have an AI partner throughout the course of the game, which I found I got some use out of. It was kind of a fun additional layer to the variety in the combat, where like they have their own moves and you can kind of synergize with those. There's like literally like synergy moves that you can do with some of them. That's super helpful for some of the bosses, which I'll get into difficulty in just a second. But, it's another layer, and it's a more personal layer because the characters you can talk to in the hub world, things like that. So that's pretty cool. The difficulty. The game, I breezed through the majority of this game. I'm not like a professional gamer by any stretch of the imagination, and, I've played a fair share of Souls games, but most of them I struggle with most of the time. I was able to play through so much of this game without looking up a guide or doing anything. Like following any build guides or anything. I made it through almost all of the game, and was then shocked when I got to some of these late game bosses, and they were incredibly difficult. And so this was very frustrating because that left me feeling like the difficulty of the game was really uneven. So, it would have been better if the difficulty was kind of you feel it throughout, rather than this spike near the end where particular bosses were significantly more difficult than the rest of the game. Because then I got to those bosses, I ended up kind of deciding, okay, it makes more sense for me to like look into some build guides, and I spent an hour or two kind of specking out my character to, adhere to closely at least to that build guide, and then I was able to get through those end game bosses. But it would have almost benefited the game if that difficulty was just throughout, and I was forced to either follow the guide throughout as someone that is more of a novice that's not going to really create their own build, or it just be easy throughout. And I probably would have complained about the game being too easy, but I think that would have been better at least than this like really uneven difficulty that I felt this game had. And maybe that's just like my personal experience with it. Other people might have different experiences, but for me, I wished for a more even difficulty. So overall, this game is good. Code Vein is a good video game, I think. If you like Dark Souls games, I think you'll like this one. There's no reason not to play it. It kind of gets overshadowed by a lot of other Souls-likes, like Liza P and some other games that came out since then. But this one is actually pretty good. I think this one holds its own to any of those kind of Souls-like offshoots that I played over the more recent years. So, overall, a fun experience. I really enjoyed the visual style of the game more than the story. And the game kind of grew on me late. Honestly, building out and speccing out my character to those builds created more interest in me to, like, maybe re-experience some of the early parts of the game with a more focused build. So, to me, overall, it's worth it if you like this type of video game. I do not come at this as, like, an anime lover. I'm not a big anime person. But maybe if you're really into anime, this could be an entry point into the genre of Souls-likes, just because it is anime-focused. But, if you're not, I wouldn't say this should be your first game. I would go with something like a Dark Souls or a Bloodborne or something like that. But, there could be an entry point for some people, I should say. Overall, I'm going to give this game an 8 out of 10. I was really between a 7 and an 8 for this game. I really want to stick to the 10-point scale, so just 1 through 10, no half points. If I gave out half points, this would be a very clear 7.5 instead of an 8. So it really fits well with the Metacritic score of around 75. I bumped it up to an 8 because I actually personally enjoyed it quite a bit, and overall this is like mostly based off of my own personal enjoyment. And then I thought I had another slide, but would I recommend playing this game in 2026? Yeah, I think I would. I think this is certainly, if you're into Souls-likes, this is a game you can find on super sale in a lot of different places. I would certainly buy it on sale. But with that in mind, like if you find it on sale for like anything less than $20, I would say this is a good purchase and a fun experience, and one worth having. So that is my first review in a little bit. Thanks for listening. I hopefully will be posting these more often moving forward. Thanks.